Who's that? Oh,
Hello.
Simon. Hi, Simon. How are you?
Am I here on the right day?
What day did you want to be here?
That's for 3 ingredient recipes in.
It is. It's Thursday, and on Thursdays we make 3 ingredient recipes.
Yes, John. I know. You like cheese?
Oh, I love cheese. We make a lot of things with cheese.
Well, I just happen to have acquired a wheel of Brie.
Oh, Brie. Brie is really fancy cheese. How did you acquire some Brie?
I have me sauces.
Oh, okay. So you have some Brie.
I have some Brie. Would you like to use it for a trade?
What do you want to trade it for?
Sample of whatever you make, of course.
Okay. Well, have you ever heard of Brie en Croute?
I had a girlfriend named Brie, and she was on Croute all the time.
I have no idea what that means.
Neither do I. I was just trying to be humorous.
Oh, okay. So where's the Brie?
You see me pack there?
Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, so we have a little wheel of Brie, and we have acquired it with Simon.
From my sources, of course.
From Simon's sources. So we thank you, your sources. Simon and I are
Thank you very much.
We're going to make something called Brie en Croute. So why don't we figure out the rest of the ingredients for this recipe, and we'll get started.
All right then.
Okay. So our first ingredient is obviously Brie.
Yes, and I would imagine the second ingredient is probably Croute.
Right. So Brie en Croute means Brie that's wrapped in pastry. Yeah. So we will go get our second ingredient.
All right then.
Our second ingredient is 1 puff pastry sheet.
Oh. How many ingredients went into make the puff pastry then?
Well, you know, making 3 ingredient recipes doesn't mean always making everything from scratch. You can start with a pre-existing ingredient. In fact, we've used ice cream to make cake, and we've used ice cream actually to make milkshakes. There's a lot of different things that go into a 3 ingredient recipe that might have been pre-made, and these pre-made puff pastry sheets save a lot of time and a lot of effort. And
so do my sauces.
Oh, I see.
Yes, we save a lot of time and effort here.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to use 1 puff pastry sheet. You're going to take it out of the freezer and let that thaw before you start. Our third ingredient is dried cherries.
Dried cherries?
Yep.
There's a reason why we're using dried, not the fresh.
Right. So if you used fresh berries or fresh fruit inside of this, other than something like pears or apples, what would happen is all the water would evaporate, and it would make the pastry inside of the pastry really soggy.
Ew, I wouldn't want that.
Nope. So we're going to use dried cherries. Now this topping inside of the Brie is not something that has to be cherries. You can use nuts, you can use cranberries, you could use jellies. I've seen this made with all sorts of things. So whatever topping you would like on this cheese, perfectly fine to put in this Brie en Croute.
So cranberries would be good then?
Cranberries would work really well.
How about apricots?
Apricots would be great.
I could probably ask a couple other things, but my mind's a blank at the moment.
Okay, so why don't we get started? We're going to start with a floured surface. Now, flour isn't one of the ingredients, and you could probably get away with not using flour at all, but it works really well to make sure that the puff pastry doesn't stick to the counter or to your rolling pin. So you're going to want to put a little bit of flour onto your rolling pin. It helps to dust your hands a little bit with some flour. And now we're just going to take our sheet of puff pastry. These usually come frozen, so you're going to want to make sure that you defrost it. If you are going to defrost it well ahead of time, you're going to want to make sure you put it back in the fridge to let the butter come back together. The thing that makes puff pastry puff up is that the butter inside, when it hits the hot oven, it evaporates the steam that's inside of the butter, and then that causes the layers of pastry to puff up. So we're just going to take this and we're going to roll this out just to get it a little thinner. You don't want puff pastry to be too thick when it's wrapped around the cheese. So just go in different directions and try to keep this as square as possible. You can turn your pastry. And then go in the next direction as well. We don't really want to flatten this out too much. It's fine. We don't have a very large wheel of cheese. If you have a really big wheel of Brie, then obviously you're going to want to really roll this out quite a bit. In fact, one of these sheets could probably cover, probably 2 of these wheels if we rolled it out thin enough, but we don't necessarily need to do that. Now that we have the pastry rolled out a bit, I just want to kind of measure where the cheese is going to fit. I'm going to put it right in the middle, and then I'm going to take my topping. Now you can use whatever you want. We're just going to use some dried cherries. You can use compote, you can use jellies and jams, you can put in nuts. I wouldn't recommend using fresh berries because those will just disintegrate, but you could use apples. If you peeled apples quite thin, you could put them right in the middle and they'll cook up, or you could cook the apples away a little bit and add that to the cheese. Just whatever you want. I have seen this done with hot pepper jelly, which works really well as well. So now what we're going to do is we are going to, in the same somewhat diameter of the cheese, we're going to lay down our cherries. Don't worry about making it too perfect. I would just put these in a single layer where the cheese is going to go. You don't want to have it spread out too far, and you also don't want a really thick layer of fruit. So now all we're going to do is place our cheese on top, and then we're going to see how much we can fold this over. What you don't want is, you don't want to make like a whole large sort of like a purse. What you want to do is make sure that it's kind of flat on the bottom. You just want your seams to come together. So I find that if you can cover the cheese itself this way, and then you can take a knife and cut away a bit of the excess on both sides. And then you can open it up again and just do this sort of corner to corner. Bring up all sides. Make sure it all tucks in underneath itself. Again, there's no real science to this. You can just fold this up. Doesn't have to be terribly neat. Just make sure that you get the edges together and then pinch those edges together. They will just hold their shape. And again, it doesn't look all that neat and tidy on the bottom, but the bottom isn't what we're going to be looking at. What we're going to do next is we will pick the whole thing up. And now I'm just going to place this right down on a parchment-lined baking sheet. Now this will go into a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 20 minutes, or until this pastry puffs up and turns nice and golden brown. If you want it to brown a little bit more, you can hit this with an egg wash. Just beat up a single egg and coat the top. I find with puff pastry, especially this commercial puff pastry, really doesn't make too much of a difference. And we're holding to 3 ingredients, so we're going to just pop this right into the oven. So I had a couple of strips of puff pastry left over. I didn't want to waste that. I don't know if this is going to actually work out, but I do have this raspberry lime Ricky jam that I got for toast. So I'm just going to try putting a little tiny bit in the middle of some little crosses of these strips of puff pastry. Now I'm just going to try folding this all over. Like that. And my hope is that these will turn into like little, I don't know, turnovers or something. If nothing else, it keeps me from throwing them away. If they don't taste good, nothing lost. If they taste good, then I've got a 2-ingredient recipe that goes along with my 3-ingredient recipe. All right, so this has just come out of the oven. As you can see, the top, even though I didn't use an egg wash, is nice and brown. It's puffed way up. My little experiment here with the extra pieces of puff pastry didn't go quite as planned. They kind of exploded with the jam opening right up. That's perfectly fine. Those will taste really good all on their own. So I will try those when they cool down. And speaking of cooling down, this is not only puffed up in the middle, but the inside is going to be molten hot. So you're going to want to make sure that this rests for at least 20 minutes, anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes. It can take a really long time, so just let it do its thing. I've got it on a wire rack. I just threw this onto a wire rack. When it has cooled sufficiently, we can then cut right into it and get into that cheesy goodness. These little guys will probably take a little bit less time to cool down, so that can be my snack while I'm waiting. Okay, so we have let this cool down for about 20-25 minutes. It's now cool enough to handle, which is what you want, because when you serve this, it's going to be something that people will take little pieces of, and they'll just be eating that wonderful puff pastry directly. So why don't we cut right into this? We'll cut a nice big piece out. Oh, there we go. Now, as you can see, it's now wonderfully gooey inside. We have the cherries. They're nice. They're popping out right like that. So there's these nice, beautiful red cherries. The brie is wonderfully soft. And you can just take a nice bit of this puff pastry and just dip that directly into the brie. And that's going to taste wonderful. Now, there's a lot of brie in here and a lot of cherries. So you're going to want to serve this with either a little bit of bread or some crackers for dipping into this cheese. But the puff pastry around this is really delicious. And even if you put the puff pastry itself onto a cracker with all of this great delicious stuff, it's going to taste just absolutely excellent. So what do you think, Simon? Was this worth talking to your sources and getting yourself some brie?
I think so. So I didn't want to talk with my mouth full.
Oh, well, that's very polite of you. So what do you think? Is this something that you would want to make for friends and family?
Sure, I'll see if I can get my sauces to make some more for the family.
Oh, that's fantastic. So this is fantastic for parties. It's really great for any sort of celebration. It's something that impresses people, even though it doesn't really take any time at all to make. So if you have an occasion coming up, or if you just want a snack at home that's a little bit fancier than just some cheese and crackers, why not throw some puff pastry over a wheel of brie and make yourself a really nice, delicious snack.
It's very nice and good quality too.
It is. It's good quality. Get yourself some good brie and you're all set.
Just think what you can do with 4 ingredients with this though.
Oh, 4 ingredients would be a completely different show.
One that Mama George has.
Oh, we haven't gotten to that yet.
Oh, all right then.
It was great having you on the show again, Simon.
Thank you very much, Sam. Any requests for my sauces for next time?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Actually, that would be something that would be really great for the folks who are watching. If you have anything that Simon could pick up from his sources and get to us for 3 ingredient recipes, why don't you leave that down below?
They fell off a cart or a truck or something like that.
Sure, we don't ask any sort of questions when it comes to Simon's sources.
Well, I won't tell you a direct lie anyway.
All right. So if you have any requests, if you want to learn how to make something with 3 ingredients, we're going to try to figure out if we can do it for you. Just leave a comment below. If you want to stick with us and see us, we're here every Thursday. Just hit that red subscribe button and you will be notified when we have new ingredients and new recipes.
Are there any other shows in the channel? Plug.
Glad you asked, Simon. So we have on weekends, there's George. He's a cat. And
I'm not keen on very much cats.
That's fine. You don't have to visit George, but he talks about how to be good to yourself. And then on Tuesdays, I talk about long hair.
Very good then.
All right.
That's very good to yourself, I think.
I think so.
All right then.
Well, we loved having you, and we loved having you. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Cheerio all. And I would imagine the second ingredient is probably a croute or something like that. I'm not sure what it is. Though.
Right. So
like a crouton.
Well, I think I don't really know exactly what en croute means in French. I didn't actually look it up because
I'm not French either.
Oh.
Either, whatever you want to say. Let's call the whole thing off.
What are we doing?
I know.
Okay.